Okay, honestly, this feels like cheating. It does. I didn't really realize that this is even a possibility, but today we are going over Rick Tocchet's pre-game comments against the St. Louis Blues. The Vancouver Canucks posted this a little while ago. I was unfortunately sleeping. Yeah, I had kind of a late night. Got destroyed with the boys on EASHL. It was very, very bad. I'm not even gonna go out there and talk about it. The gameplay's already deleted too. But all terrible video game nights aside, we had ourselves some news with the Vancouver Canucks heading into tonight's game against the St. Louis Blues. And to help us all out, because I don't want to go out there and copy and paste the video of Canucks head coach Rick Tocchet speaking out about the Blues, we're going over onto Canucks News Summary's Twitter account because they summarized all of the big notes that we need from this video. Man, this Twitter account is so amazing. Big shout out over to Corey McKay, who of course is the guy behind Vancouver Canucks News Summaries. He does stuff for Canucks Army as well. Absolute legend, man. Absolute legend. This is what Rick Tocchet said about Thatcher Demko heading into today's game against the Blues. Demko is starting tonight. Tocchet wanted Demko to feel comfortable, and Lankinen was feeling well. There was no pressure to get Demko in, but they had talked about the possibility of a conditioning stint. This feels like the best way for him to go, though. It's to get game action, and it should excite the team as well to play in front of Demmer. We had spoken about this in a video earlier today, but ultimately it's a great move for him to come into this game, because St. Louis isn't really all too great. Their standing in the league this year is not all too high, and with their transition from a lot of their older, aging-out guys to younger players, they've just gotten on Broberg and Holloway. They still have some other guys that are in the system cooking, and they're younger players on the roster are also making an impact. Jake Neighbor stands out to me, so does Jordan Kyrou, and even their goaltender Joel Hofer is going to be starting today, so nice to see some younger talent getting into the lineup. But this is a much more appropriate game for Thatcher Demko to get, rather than a 1 p.m. start against the Tampa Bay Lightning. There was also a conversation going around the past few days as to how the Canucks didn't want to give Demko that 1 p.m. game because it's not a 7 p.m. start, because there isn't a morning skate, because there isn't a long day, and then there isn't really the same sort of progress that you would be used to on a regular game night in a 1 p.m. start time, because you gotta wake up, get to the rink, and boom, you're playing. That's it. Like, you don't even get lunchtime. So, ultimately, the Canucks did not want to give Demko an earlier game against a team that's so good like Tampa Bay, so they waited a little bit, gave Lankinen that game, he played alright, and then Demko gets the St. Louis game. Regular 7 p.m. start time, regular timeline for him heading into game action, and the opponent is much worse. So, Thatcher Demko, he's officially back. Nice to see it. Rick Tocchet goes out there and also talks about JT Miller. Tocchet says he doesn't know if Miller will play Thursday, but Miller will fully participate in practice tomorrow. Millsy has been skating, though, and he's also anxious to get going. Last season, JT Miller was starting 90% of the games, and the puck would end up in the opposite end. This allowed the Canucks to get their forecheck going. Miller is one of the guys that dives right in from the start of games. Tocchet also says, though, that the timeline as to when JT comes back, this is communicated between Tocchet and Miller, so there's some good conversations going on there. And Tocchet even says that he talks to Miller quite a bit, even outside of hockey. Miller will text him late at night sometimes. So there you go. I think that's a really important thing to bring up, especially towards the end, because there was some sort of an idea from fans of the Vancouver Canucks floating around in this bubble like, oh, Rick Tocchet is not really all too fond of JT. He benched JT. There's a rift between Tocchet and JT. And that was a pretty ridiculous idea, because I think a lot of people might be scarred from the way JT Miller had been playing in the Boudreau days and how that entire thing ended off before Rick was initially hired, and etc., etc. There were a lot of things to go on with JT Miller and the country club vibes that the Vancouver Canucks offered. Oh, remember the JT versus Bo Horvat thing? Not the JT and Bo thing, the JT versus Bo thing. Yeah, it was kind of toxic back in 2022 or whenever it was, but ultimately, there seems to be a very good plan here. And this was communicated by Jim Rutherford as well to fans, that the Canucks know what they're getting with JT. They know what is appropriate here. JT is into it as well. He has been skating. There were people going out there and tweeting, oh yeah, JT Miller's on the ice. He's on the ice, but it doesn't seem like he'll be able to fully get involved in practice until tomorrow. And ultimately, Miller's one of the best guys on the team. It's not debatable, that fact. He had 100 points last year. There certainly is potential for him to maybe get like 75 to 80 points again this year. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, not saying it's impossible, but he already missed out on a good chunk of games here, so there is a little bit of extra fodder lost out from his point production, but it's good to hear that Tocchet and Miller do communicate even outside of the game of hockey, because that goes directly against the idea that Rick Tocchet and JT Miller are clashing heads or whatever. Like, no, it's not really the case here. It's just the guy needed to take his own personal leave of absence, and he's almost back. Great. However, when it comes to another guy who's really close to playing, you got Derek Forbort here. Tocchet says that he's not sure if Forbort will play tonight, but it's a very good possibility that Forbort plays on Thursday. Tocchet also doubts that Forbort will play tonight, however, he does say that the player wants to play. So there you go, yet another Canucks defenseman that could be coming back soon. Speaking about the Canucks defenseman who will be playing in tonight's game, sounds like Erik Brannstrom will be a healthy scratch tonight for the Canucks. Mark Friedman will draw into the lineup and play with Vinny Desharnais. So that's a really strange sort of way to manage your lines, ultimately. A lot of people are going out there and questioning why Erik Brannstrom, of all people, has been removed from the lineup, but at least Mark Friedman is getting his chops, I guess. I don't want to go out there and start, like, picking apples and oranges between bottom pairing defensemen, but still, having Vinny Desharnais in and Erik Brannstrom out does not feel right in any respect. Who knows what happens when Derek Forbort returns as well. If you just go Forbort Brannstrom or Forbort Desharnais, and maybe Brannstrom gets even more time off, who really knows. I like Brannstrom a lot. He's been a very good player so far, so it's kind of weird to see him getting taken out of the lineup like this, not gonna lie. Tocchet, though, speaks out about Forbort and Forbort's potential to returning. He also talks about tonight's game. The St. Louis Blues are another good rush team, and how the Canucks' rush defense has to be up to par. He said that the Canucks did a pretty good job 5-5 against Tampa Bay, and they need to do the same here today. No looking ahead to next game, just focus on tonight's game. The Canucks have been playing pretty good hockey and have to be careful they don't overanalyze a lot of what's going on. Tocchet also says that the Canucks lost last game against Tampa Bay because of special teams, and they need to get more out of a couple of individuals. They have to show up for the team. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with any of that. Realistically, I mean, the St. Louis Blues, they've been doing some really good things on the rush, and if you take a look at some of the highlights, I mean, just talk about some of the guys who have been finding ways to make great passes and great goals happen. You have Dylan Holloway, who has been a stud this season. Philip Broberg really excels in a system that allows him to go up and down with the puck, and the Canucks, when it comes to the way they're able to suppress that, that's going to be their biggest challenge for tonight's game, and they're going to have to improve their special teams. They lost Tampa because they lost special teams. They couldn't score on an opening 4-minute power play at the beginning of the game. They weren't able to kill off some power plays towards the middle and halfway ends of the game. They lost because of that. They lost because of too many men. And the Vancouver Canucks will need to tighten that down heading into today's game against, admittedly, a weaker St. Louis Blues team, but still an opponent that will give goaltender Thatcher Demko something to work with as he opens up his 2024-2025 season. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Vancouver and St. Louis. Oh, here, there actually was a little bit more that Tocchet spoke about in regards to tonight's game. Jim Montgomery, he is a very decisive coach in how he wants his teams to play, and he is a good communicator, from what Tocchet is told. So, yeah, he did have some extra comments to say about the St. Louis Blues and their coaching staff. But once again, big shout out over to Vancouver Canucks news summaries for going out there and transcribing, paraphrasing a lot of Tocchet's comments heading into tonight's game. We'll make another post-game video about it as we always do, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.